Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Changing Face of Mining. So excited to have my friend Lucy Donald with me today, and I'll give her an opportunity to introduce herself in the beginning. Just to start off with, I was just recently in Denver for a week, which I love. We definitely talked to Lucy and I in the pre-show about how much I want to move to Denver because the people there are so kind and down to earth and casual. And Denver is located in the traditional territories of the Southern Ute tribe and Cheyenne and Arapaho tribe. Excuse me for getting that mixed. And it's stunning, and the mountains are beautiful, and they have those gorgeous red rocks, and so appreciative for as we move forward through our journey of life, ensuring that we respect those traditional lands because I love it. It's such a beautiful place to be. And another thing I want to admit to is after coming home late last night on an airplane is I am completely showing up as I am today, which is 100% one of the values of the Changing Face of Mining is people show up as they are. We go live as we are, and it just is what it is. And so I have one hand without nails, another hand with nails because I'm getting ready to go into PDAC. I am wearing my friend's Hard Rock Miner hat, Jeff Lafortune, excuse me. He'll also be happy to know that I'm wearing my Metallica t-shirt. But he owns My Mining Tea, runs that, and it is a nonprofit that sells clothing to promote mining in primary and secondary schools here in Ontario. Yeah, I'll bring it for him because he asked me if I was going to wear it. I'll bring it for him so that he can see that I do wear his clothes often. He also sent me a sweatshirt that I adore and I wear all the time. So thank you, Jeff. And so with all of that, Lucy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. And thank you so much. And also, I love that you're just showing up as you today. I think it should just be, the case for everything because it creates a really nice, authentic, warm environment. So thank you. So yeah, I am Lucy Donald. So I'm 41-year-old, mum of two, Alfie who's 8, Maya who's 4. I'm based over here in the UK, born and bred in the north of England near Manchester. I am a business owner of a company called DPA, which is a boutique search mining company. I also am a life and executive coach, NLP practitioner, and NLP being neurolinguistic programming. I am a podcast host to the Far From Boring podcast, which you've obviously been on.
Love it.
I am a baby jump roper.
Yeah, you are. I love that.
Loving I'm about a year into that now, and it's become my obsession. And also, I am 2.5 years sober. So
I love that. And that's why we're here today, is to talk about both of us.
We are. And you know what? I was reflecting upon this, and that was quite a mouthful, really, of an introduction. And it's no coincidence that the commas have increased after my name since I turned sober, right? So before I was drinking, not that there's anything wrong with it, it would just be like, mum, recruitment.
Yeah.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just feel like it's an interesting observation that there's been a lot of growth in that 2.5 years, right?
Yeah. Well, it affords so much more brain space, I find, because you wake up so much more refreshed and whatnot. So why don't you tell me what your path to sobriety was and what sobriety means to you? And then I will talk about my path to sobriety and what sobriety means to me, because I think our paths might have been similar, but sobriety means different things to both of us.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, I've been doing quite a lot of work in this space recently. So through that, quite a lot of introspection. So I grew up, so I'm a mature millennial. So I'm on that cusp of the X gen versus I cling on to being a millennial, right? Because, at the upper limit. So I grew up in an era whereby teenage drinking, certainly in the northwest of England, was completely normal, right? So when our parents thought that we were playing Sonic the Hedgehog and playing with our trolls, we were out on a field drinking Alka-Pops and hanging out with convicts. That was completely normal, right?
Mine didn't have the convicts, but was very similar otherwise.
The same convicts. It was awful. We used to like take our money from our parents or our like the money that we'd earned from like paper rounds or whatever you did in the 90s, and then give it to homeless people to go and get our cigarettes and booze from the local shop. It's shameful. But anyway, you know, that was, I think that's why we're strict parents now, because we know what goes down.
Yeah, right.
We know what goes down with teenagers. But anyway, so yeah, that was basically very, very normal for me growing up. So I was probably drinking from the age of 14, and then I stopped at age 39. So spanning over 25 years. And for me, when I first started drinking, I found I absolutely loved it, I'll be honest, because I grew up quite a timid, introverted, shy little girl, believe it or not. And through drinking, I loved who I became when I first started drinking. Sorry, is that sun really in my face?
Oh,
no.
In your face, you can't see. So,
but really like extroverted, confident, funny, showwoman, and you know, I kind of was like, yeah, I like who I am when I have a drink. But over the course of the years, obviously, the more I drank, the more actually it was impacting my confidence when I wasn't drinking, because I feel like it was really watering and like the shame and guilt that then became a bit of a permanent resident in my mind, because certainly as I continued my life through binge drinking, the blackouts were becoming more and more prevalent for me, which I think was something that really was going against my values, because I wasn't accountable for what I was saying or doing. And listen, I'm a lover, so I was never offensive when I was drinking, but I just wasn't conscious of what I was doing and saying. And that for me became very corrosive, right? Yep. So the very thing that I used to turn to get this cloak of confidence and have this unlimited social battery was actually taking that away from me, if that makes sense as well. Yep. So yeah, after being sober curious for a long time, and lots of hypnotherapy, going to therapy, good old-fashioned trying willpower, driving to events, I'd always end up ditching the car, back drinking. I just couldn't control my drinking. So it was actually 2.5 years ago that I woke up there one day on a family holiday for an all-inclusive and said, this is going to be my last all-inclusive champagne. And yeah, 2.5 years on, I'm still sober.
Oh, wow. So do you have like a concrete date? Like, do you remember, do you have an anniversary? People in my life have anniversaries. So
yeah, I feel like it was quite important for me. So it's, sorry, that afternoon Manchester sun, which is usually very elusive, is hello, nice to see you. But, yeah, it was the 30th of August, 2022. So I think it's something like 912 days. So yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. How about you?
Yeah, so similar path to it. I was a little bit older, despite what my parents think. I was actually pretty close to the legal drinking age of Canada, which was 19. I think there was one time before that where, not that my friend who would know the story watches this anymore, but I managed to fertilize a bed of rhubarb quite heavily. Oh man. And but yeah, similar to you, I definitely grew up, I am introverted. I'm what would be considered a not shy introvert. And so I can be shy, can be definitely intimidated. And I guess that's maybe the rejection sensitivity disorder of the good old ADHD. And it started same way as like I found that I felt less social anxiety by drinking. And then when I was with one of my old companies, like in mining, there's a heavy drinking culture. I would stay up super late, and it was a way of me getting in with the leadership team, which was mostly men. And so keeping up with the boys and how late are you going to stay up at PDAC, which was one reason why I asked you to do it at this time, because we're heading into PDAC next week. And it's quite normal to be out until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. drinking our faces off, and I just can't do that. So for me, I'm trying to think. For me, it was definitely during the pandemic, and getting older, and I just hated the way I woke up and felt. Like, I felt so gross in the morning, and so there were no events going on, but at the same time too, I'm like, "Oh, I'm sleeping until 10. I have this terrible headache. It's eating into the day. It's expensive." All this other stuff. So I would say I'm sober-ish because I don't drink on a day-to-day basis. I have probably less than 10 drinks per year, always at a conference, because I do still struggle with that social anxiety piece. But and so there is still that a little bit of a crutch there, but I always stop at 2 because then I can feel it hitting my head and who knows what's going to come out of my mouth. And I want to preserve some dignity would be nice.
I know that feeling so well. It's like a roulette, like, what's she going to say?
Yeah.
Spin it.
Right. So, yeah. And I almost always, it's with other women now at this point. So it's with members of the Feminine Collective or people that I'm at the conference with. So it's a very controlled environment. And I can control it. I don't necessarily feel as though I can't. But to me, so the reason why I chose the cover image for this one was the masking that came about. And I know you and I both deal with masking because of our own, you're proudly neurodivergent.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was part of it too, is it really helped me to embrace that neurodiversity piece and understand who's Peggy, because I never really got that. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because that definitely came up in the pre-call.
So it's huge. And I actually realized, so I've realized that I am neurodivergent and I ADHD more so than, well, I don't think I'm autistic. I'm ADHD in the last year and a half. And that has been a huge revelation for me because it coincided with turning sober. And obviously then retrospectively, I was able to go back and go, okay, this makes a lot of sense. So I've been unpacking that because, addiction is heavily connected to ADHD. So it's kind of been going back and really understanding myself, which has been a roller coaster completely. At the same time, it's been liberating, very liberating, because I've been able to connect to myself again and understand who I am, which has massively increased my confidence. Like, I would never have done this when I was drinking or before I realized I had ADHD. But I think that I was masking since I was a little girl. Like, there's no thinking, I know, because obviously we know, don't we, that ADHD presents completely differently in women or girls from a very early age on learn to mask, learn to fit in, and to quote Brené Brown, we also know that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. So we were conditioned to do that. So I was also doing it obviously through drinking as well, to try and fit in, to my point earlier, to try to be the showwoman, to try to be the extrovert, like tap into her. Come on, she needs to be extroverted to show up, which obviously then also manifested in the mining industry and building relationships. I thought that was what my clients wanted to see: fun, time, loose, the extrovert, the person that was interested, that you wanted by their side at these events. So anyway, it was really an interesting exercise going back and realizing that actually by creating space, which Sobriety has offered me, I have been able to unmask. And it was a messy process because at first I was kind of like, we were saying on the pre-show, it was like, remember like the mask, Jim Carrey, like pulling it off. There was this reluctance to pull it off because I wasn't sure what was authentic me and what was a mask. And at the same time, it's almost like a scaffolding feeling, because that very mask also got me to where I am now, professionally and personally. I'm so sorry about this, son. But yeah, so it's been deep rooted, but I feel like I am fully embracing who I am now, right? And the wheels have come off in many respects, because organization doesn't come naturally to us. I'd had to build coping strategies to become very organized. So I've noticed now that I'm giving myself permission to just be authentic loose. that there are areas in my life, mostly in the house, where I'm seeing that that is true to full default setting. Organization isn't my strength. Certain areas of my life, if that makes sense. I'm still very organized when it comes to work, because I know I need that in order for it to flourish.
Yeah.
But yeah, how about you with your unmasking?
It was definitely a process. And I think that's one of the things about sobriety that has become so much more interesting to me, is that so you don't necessarily show up one day and decide you stop drinking and all of a sudden you're healthy, right? Like, so you might have that day like you have. I don't have it. I don't have a day. I have like a general season. Like, it was September around my 40, how old am I? Around my 43rd, 44th birthday. Yeah, I find that you stop drinking and then there's a whole basket of shit that you need to uncover, right? And unpack. And, there's definitely relationships that may not continue based on sobriety. I often say that people are uncomfortable with other people's sobriety.
Yeah. You're holding up a mirror, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's exactly it. And so I have found that some of my personal relationships have either suffered or no longer exist because of my sobriety, which is sad but interesting. And I always say to Beth, when we talk about the wellness journeys of some of our members, that it's a journey, right? We're all on different paths, and so where we are, I try not to hold them. How do I put this? I try not to be angry at that they are, right?
You're judging them, and you're not. Yeah, you're taking the emotion out of it. Like, you're understanding why they may feel that way.
Yeah, exactly. And so so there was that piece that was definitely interesting around the how I show up at work. Like, what you see of me online is who I am all the time.
Brilliant. And that's why you're magnetic, right?
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
It's the only way, because people, I don't think, like, they subconsciously or consciously pick up on that. And there's a reason why you're drawn to more authentic people, for that reason itself. It just feels safe.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, I do think I'm more, to your point around the energy pieces, I will often say, since the pandemic, I just don't have the ability to go out as long. And I didn't really put together that until you said it just now, that I was like, well, wait a second, since the pandemic, I've also quit drinking. So there's that as well, right? So maybe it's not, it wasn't the pandemic that was the trigger for that, but the actual drinking itself that was. So that's interesting. And I also find now that I'm typically at conferences, home and in bed by 10 o'clock. Before it was like, I'll sleep like 12 hours over 4 days. And now I'm like, oh no, at 10 o'clock, I'm going home. Because I also find that, again, this is maybe where the judgment starts to creep up. I'm watching messy stuff happen, right? Like, I'm watching, especially at PDAC, which is the home of finance, like men being inappropriate with young women and stuff like that. And I can't stomach it anymore.
You can't stay, and by staying, it's almost saying it's okay, right? You need to remove yourself from that. I get that. And it's interesting, though, that when you're looking at it through sober or sober-ish lens, the reality that unfolds versus when I was walking around white girl wasted, like, I wouldn't see that.
Yeah. It's so, I totally
play into that. And it's so interesting. It's like literally seeing it through a different person's eyes. And I think you're right. I think you can almost gauge the energy of a room. So I have this theory that the reason why a lot of people do drink, especially in these social settings, is that, I don't know, I'm mostly speaking about in a UK social setting, but obviously, going to events like the Indaba that I've just been, I think everybody goes there a little bit on edge. I think you can, as soon as you walk in, especially if you get there early, you can feel like the energy of the room is slightly awkward, slightly subdued, slightly, stale, dare I say it. And then you literally can feel it rise about a few hours in, when people have had that cloak of confidence that comes with the alcohol, and they loosen up. And then obviously there's probably a period where that's quite fun, that's quite energetic, but then, you know, you get anything maybe past like 11 o'clock as well, and you start noticing that there's an even different vibe. And if you're not on that level, that's very difficult to stay
Yes.
in, very difficult, because you're just on different frequencies then, and it's no judgment, it's just there's just no point. So for me, that's when I know when to like politely remove myself and go home. And you know, I did do a lot of like, it's not all roses at all, like this isn't some sort of smug ideology. You know, at times during the Indaba that I've just been to in Cape Town, I was thinking, right, am I actually missing out where my counterparts are benefiting now, you know, when they're networking and with them, you know, clients and building relationships over booze? But then I was like, no, I'm going to reframe this to be more outcome focused than problem focused. And I feel like, well, I can get myself home. I left, I was classy, I was dignified, I was still interested. You know, my confidence and self-worth is so much higher than when I was drinking, and I'm showing up as who I want DPA to show up as, right? And then I'm home, you know, I get some good sleep, I get up early, I jump, I exercise, I get my back-to-back selective meets with my clients and show up fresh, alert. And I feel like this was probably one of my best Indabas. I've come back with so much new business as well from like-minded people that are wanting to retain my services and work with me from that. So every time you do this and you put yourself through these awkward situations, but reframe it and turn it into a positive, that inner confidence grows. And then suddenly that just becomes your baseline and your normality, and you can't imagine going back. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. I think for me, like once I started sober, so I'm going into my third soberish PDAC. And I say, like, after 9 o'clock, there's no business happening. Like nobody's doing anything. You'll like at the very most, you might be like, oh, I remember, I think I was talking about somebody about something that I should maybe follow up on today. And by the time you might see them, might be on the trade show floor, and you're in the middle of like happy time cocktails. And then you literally don't get anything done. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's, I don't think you're certainly losing out on anything as far as opportunities go, especially if you do hold, which this is a product of being sober, where I hold my values so strongly that I'm like, this is me. What you get online when you get the ranty Peggy about, you know, the industry or whatever, this is me, and this is who I am, and this is who you're going to get. So if you're not value aligned with that, then we're probably not going to work well together. And
this is liberating. And I think it's once you realize that, and that comes from like the biggest gift that sobriety has given me is self-love and self-worth. So I now fully embody that as well. And then you do attract like-minded people, and that in itself is just everything for me. But at the same time, I'm always like going to show like both sides of the story. So whenever I go to the Indaba, I go with the CEO of another gold mining company. He's very kind. He takes me to all of the events, almost like this is +1 to a company. So that always helps because we get on so well. We're really good friends. And this year he was like, do you know what? I'm going to try dry Indaba. I was like, okay, there's pressure, right? And he's like, no, like, you're an inspiration. I see what you do. I see you. I'm going to try it. So over the course of the week, we did it. And I was like, I am so proud of you, by the way. And he's like, it's great. It's like, you know, he's like, we just get a tonic in like a normal like glass that you would have if it's a gin and tonic. No one really asks, because let's be honest, no one really cares about you. Everyone cares about themselves, right? So no one after, and it's also how you position it. If you hesitate, and say, yeah, I think I'm not, go on, drink. I'm just like, no, like there's no judgment. I just don't drink, you know, smile, move on, next, right? Then they soon stop. But he was like, oh my God, I was up the next day, did a run, did my meetings. This feels great. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, so proud of you. I mean, he took me to one event, and he knows the CEO of Goldfields very well, Mike. And I will be honest, like, by that point, my social battery had gone. Like, I nearly left at that point before we went there. And he was like, let me introduce you to Mike. And I will be honest, I reckon I would have showed up as a better version of me if I'd had a few Prosecco's, if I'm honest, at that point, because my battery had gone. And I feel like that was a little bit of a wasted opportunity to not show my best self. But you know what? I'm just being honest, and that's the purpose of this, just to be fully authentic. It's ebbs and flows. It's never going to be all roses either way, right? So you've just got to accept that and take that on board.
Yeah, 100%. And I do think, it's never perfect. And but I want to talk about a little bit before you hit your sobriety, before I hit my sobriety point. It was when we were having that mirror given, like, put up to us, and like, how did you respond? Because I am not proud of the way I treated non-drinkers in the past, and these are people I worked with. So what was your piece on that?
Oh my God. Right. So first of all, I think it comes down to how you view sobriety. So, and this was me, I would see it as dry, boring, dull, straight-laced, you know, and everything I didn't want to be, or / thought, well, I'm not. And I now know I'm not. So I think there was this resistance, and I would say, oh, you're so boring, have a drink. I would be the person now where I'd be like, can you please move away? Like, you know, you're invading my personal space, you're spitting all over me and like projecting all of your nastiness inside onto me. So yeah, I was probably guilty of being that person, but I think it's because of the perception of sobriety to me, which I now know is completely opposite. I mean, what are your thoughts when you heard the word sobriety?
Well, because of like the culture being so alcohol focused and me wanting to be successful in that role in that company, I was definitely not kind to non-drinkers. There was a woman on the leadership team, and now I'd have a totally different approach to all of this, who was a non-drinker and very healthy. She was a vegetarian, all these other things. And so we were not kind to her. We're like, oh, you can't trust a vegetarian that doesn't drink. Right. And so,
God, yeah.
It was not
trust. That was it. That was a big thing. You can't trust. Why don't you drink? Yes.
And I get it now, because now I would be that person. And then I would still try to be friendly and personable and build those relationships. But man, it must have been hard for her. And I think when I was on your podcast, I talked about how there are people in this industry that I owe apologies to as part of that. Well, I don't work a program, but as part of that whole making amends, whether that is sobriety or changing the way you work or realizing that you weren't your authentic self in the workplace. And so I do owe her an apology, and I need to be okay with the fact that when that apology is made, she may not accept it.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, my own piece that I need to deal with, because I can't assume that my evolution is what makes that situation okay.
I completely understand. And I just think it goes back to that point as well, that sometimes like how we respond to other people is a reflection about how we feel about ourselves, right? So it was obviously coming from a place of some sort of insecurity or scarcity, right, in ourselves. And this person was making us feel inadequate. That's an us problem, not them. But that's when you're on the receiving end of that, that can be hostile, that can be intimidating. And you're right. But just like everything, it's an evolution, it's maturity, it's life experience. And just holding that space to reflect upon that and go back just shows your maturity and your evolution moving on. It just depends at what point you are in your life.
Yeah, it really is. And then I have to think about too, like the people that I have no longer work with that still do that. Like, you know, those are some of the personal relationships that I've lost that I need to be okay with. But at the same time too, I wake up feeling so much better every day. And I think I need to recognize that. But you took on skipping in sobriety. So I want to know, like, from a physical standpoint, what are your, what do you find like physically is different with everything? Okay.
I think my whole life has changed, and the catalyst was sobriety. And I think for me, like people say to me, how did you do it? And if I reflect back, it's kind of like, I think why I became a neurolinguistic programmer as well, because I genuinely believe that we can change our outcomes based on, you know, the language that we use, our inner language. So rather than focusing on what I wanted to achieve, I focused on the person I wanted to become. And then almost my identity emerged then out of my actions and habits. So one of the things that I wanted to become was the best version of myself, physically, emotionally, spiritually, professionally, you know, in its most simplistic form. So you start physically, right? So I was like, I want to be fit. I want to be full of vitality. So that's the identity. What's the action? Gym every day. Then I was like, I kind of want to do something a little bit different. I want to be cool. I want to be a lifetime learner. I want to show my children that no matter what age you are, you can learn a new skill to a high standard, right? You've just got to show up. You've got to be consistent. So I wanted to do that, learn to jump rope, right? And I've got to the point now where it's an essential part of my life. And I was like, I want to be interesting. I want to be interesting, inspirational, again, playing into that lifetime learner, read every night. I was like, okay, like I can see this is picking up a bit of momentum. What else do I want? Like, because you build that inner confidence when you see that your actions are then, you know, translating into your identity and who you want to be. And this is all a great distraction, by the way, from wanting a drink.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, what else? So I was like, I want to be emotionally attuned. I want to be able to, you know, really understand, be reflective, be expressive, be vulnerable. Started therapy again. That was all very, very much
therapy.
Through that, it helped me as well. I got an ADHD coach as well, so really taught me to embrace and accept who I am, right? But also understand what I'm working with and how we can hone that. But also give myself grace when, you know, we have more tricky moments. Podcast. So I started the podcast for the same reason, identity. I wanted to be a thought leader and so forth. So I think once you ascertain who you want to be, your habits will then, every time you do your habits and your action, it's about in the direction of like, yeah, you are becoming the person you want to be. And I would say if anyone was thinking about making a change, and it doesn't have to be around alcohol, start with that and see how you get on. But it's all about consistency, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting comment, because I've recently been thinking about it a bit of a different way, but same concept. So a big confidence booster for me was actually going out on my own, because I wasn't seeing who I thought, like I was seeing who I wanted to be reflected in people back to me, not the person I thought I was, right? So when I was in big corporate, it was always, I'm the non-technical girl with like no understanding of the mining sector. My skills are not as valuable because, again, I don't understand the mining sector, all these other things. And then when I went out onto my own and I started working with other women, it became totally a different experience, because now this is my expertise. I, am a recruiter. I'm a entrepreneur who creates communities for women. I'm HR specialist, whatever that is, but I don't understand how to brand and grow my business. That's where your expertise lies. So there became this mutual respect and understanding. And I won't lie, like it's amazing to hear. I had a call with a in-person meeting with a member over SME that was totally at a surprise. She flew in from England for a totally different reason. And she said, your branding is fantastic. I just love what you do. And I have this opportunity for you. And I really want you to get involved with this group because they really need your skills. And I just had never heard that before, right? And so
how did that work with you? How did you feel? Where did you feel
it felt so good. It felt like I felt respected. I felt validated. I felt all of these other things. And then, so I have, as full transparency, gained some good amount of weight over the pandemic because the alcohol went into sugar consumption, because, you still have the physical neurons that you need to satisfy.
Right.
And I was thinking, imagine if what does that feeling to be recognized for your talent, ability, and skill in your job? How does that feel physically in yourself to be able to say, wait, I am no longer running after Beth without not being able to take a breath. I am, my feet don't hurt as much, all these other things. Imagine how that's going to feel. And so I'm starting to, we could unpack like eating disorders and all this other stuff that I've got the past, like another day. But I'm starting to think about, no, you deserve to feel the way you feel with your clients, and you deserve to feel physically like have that same feeling, right? So
I love that. And it's like, so from a self-worth perspective, professionally, that was starting to be watered and it was growing. So once you saw that growing, you're like, where else in my life can I make these changes?
Yeah.
And what impact will that have? And I think that's it. I think once we understand the interplay between mind, body, and soul, and how they aren't individual, they all play in, you know, we really can start working towards becoming the best person of ourselves in that respect. But for me, I could only do that by eliminating something that was really keeping me back, which is the alcohol for me. And everybody's journey is completely different, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about what's serving you and what's not serving you anymore. And attachment. It's also that attachment piece, right? That I learned in yoga, in my yoga teaching course, is that when you put attachment to things, it becomes that much harder to create change. And so is that attachment a productive attachment, or is it not serving you? And how can you?
Yeah, and it was kind of like, it's like maths. So it's like you start looking at your life and you're like, I'm no mathematician, but like I just started making some subtractions, and then by doing that, some very mindful additions.
Yeah.
You know, in my life. And you know, to your point, there will be people throughout your life that I think you make time with your reaction then. But like, you know, there will be people that drop off as a result. But then, my goodness, the people that then do become into your life as well, when you start, you know, working on that self-love. Because I remember posting when I first turned sober that I was like, okay. And I was so apologetic about it, because I was like, for me, I'm quite proud. So I put it on social media for accountability. Everyone always asked me, I was like, I put it on social media because I will not lose face. I need to. If I'm saying I'm doing something, I'm putting it out there, right? And also it did help me when I was showing up to events that had already kind of said my piece, because for me, I struggle to articulate it, believe it or not now, you know, but I found it easier to write it and how I was feeling. So I did that. And I can't remember what my point was, but yeah, I would show up to the events, and the work had already been done because I'd written it out there, I'd put it out there. And for me, that was the first most important step for me, was putting it on social media to take accountability. I've written it there, and then it just became my narrative moving forward. But I think my point was that will be people that, like, you know, you do lose along the way, but the people that also then come along and support you wholly and say, Luz, we loved every version of you anyway. Drinking Luz, this Luz, future Luz, they're your people. Gravitate towards them. Gravitate towards the light givers, yeah? Because I at first was like, I'm going to avoid all social settings just to get through this. And then I was like, no, actually, I'm just going to go in. I'm going to have to throw myself into these situations because I don't always want to be shying away from it. So I still went to all of the parties. I just knew when to leave, because the awkwardness, there were times at parties, you know, fancy dress parties where Matt and I turned up like something from the 80s where we looked like, if anyone's English, we dressed up as some Scousers to go to this 80s party. First sober party, and I'm dressed up like that, and it was awkward. But every time it's awkward, embrace that, because you're growing, right? You've got to embrace the discomfort to grow. And then when you walk away, you go, I got through that. I've got 100% track record of getting through everything, and that becomes easier and easier every time.
100%. I think that's one of the things that I love about the relationships that I have now. So the dogs are still going, so we're gonna have to wrap it up shortly.
I love it. Are they howling at me, rabbiting on?
Yeah, no, you're good. And real life means that I came home to a flooding basement, so it's probably the plumber. All these things are going on. But I think that's one of the things I love about the relationships that I have now, is because they started in sobriety and they started with authenticity. So they know me and this is who I am. And so that does help most definitely with the rejection sensitivity disorder as well. As people are like, this is me, this is who I am. And they still want me to come back to their house and stay, which I love.
I think that's such an important point of anyone who has got ADHD with rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and then having to almost think about the response of other people that have only known you as a drinker. You instantly think, I'm going to be kicked out of the tribe.
Yep.
So rejection. And when you have rejection sensitivities for people who they say you only know if you've got it because you will have felt it. It's like an emotional pain, isn't it?
Oh my God. There's nothing more painful. I swear to gosh.
And so that's why we become perfectionists, because we'll do anything to try and avoid that, which in itself is just exhausting. So it's almost embracing that as well, the imperfections that go along with it. But as long as you're around the right people that have got you, keep you safe, reinforce that, make you feel enough. You know, you can mute out some of the chatter and the people that really are just, it's a reflection of how they feel about yourself when they talk about you.
100%. So final question, what would the Lucy Donald of today tell the Lucy Donald of, I usually go at the beginning of the careers, but I'll go with the Lucy Donald 900 and some odd days ago when you were drinking that last glass of champagne?
Oh my God. I'd be like, okay, first of all, it's about bloody time.
Right.
Been talking about this for so long. No, I would say I am beyond proud of you, because for me to be who I am, Lucy Donald, 27th of February 2025, I needed you still. I needed you. So I'm never going to like shame who I was. So thank you for getting me to this point. But you are just going to have so much self-worth and love, something that you've looked for the last 39 years. And you're never going to look back. So keep going. The transformation is going to be that's going to be the goal, right? And that's going to be the reward. So yeah,
I think that's a good one. I think my mine would be similar, is that you need to go through this hard stuff to get to the good stuff, and it's going to be okay. And now I need to wrap it up because the plumber really wants to get in, and I really want to have a shower today. So
you go and sort out the plumber and the dogs and get your shower. But Peggy, this has been amazing. Thank you. Thank you for holding space
so much. I'll tag you in the comments. You can drop your contact information. But thank you so much for joining. I loved it, and I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, I most certainly. And that was easy. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Okay, I gotta go.